Alright, hello guys, Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the miter and its Incarnon form. Now in this video series I take a weapon, I build it out, and I test that weapon on its own merits, meaning I don't mix it with any Warframe abilities, Warframe damage, pet abilities, pet damage, pet statuses, things like that. I just test the weapon by itself. So we're going to be doing the miter. It's like it's a primary weapon. It's like a saw launcher, kind of. So it has a regular fire mode, it has a charged fire mode, and then it has its Incarnon form. So this build is for the Incarnon, and so we're actually not really going to be using the charged fire mode too much. If you didn't have the Incarnon, obviously the charged fire mode is going to be way stronger than the regular fire mode. But as far as like how they fill up the Incarnon bar, the regular fire mode fills it up as quick as the charged, but you don't have to actually charge it, so it's actually quicker to use the regular fire mode. So not really going to be charging it too much. Something to note though is that the charged fire mode does have innate punch through, and so like when you're trying to charge the weapon for the Incarnon, if there's a few enemies that are like in a line, it might be worth charging just to try to get a few headshots so you can charge it maybe in one shot instead. Hey Biceps, thanks for following. Okay, so we'll get into the mods here. Oh, and actually, I should go over this too. So I have viral on the weapon here, but innately the miter Incarnon is going to have heat as well. That's just something to know. So you're gonna, its direct damage is gonna have IPS, so impact, puncture, slash, but its radial will have heat, and it doesn't have the IPS on the radial, which is okay. All right. So galvanized chamber for multi-shot. Galvanized scope for critical chance. Now, this weapon is not the easiest to get headshots with. It's not the hardest either, though. And it will start in yellow and orange crits. It'll start in about like 50-50 yellow to orange. Once you get one stack of galvanized scope, you're at orange and red crits, and then past one stack of galvanized scope, you're going to see more and more red crits until you're fully at red crits. But because this weapon is, again, it's not the easiest, but it's not the hardest to get headshots with, and so you'll likely not stay at 5 stacks. Like you'll usually be kind of hovering between like 2 and 3 stacks of galvanized scope. But with this weapon, that's enough. With this weapon, that's enough, because at 2 or 3 stacks of galvanized scope, you're at orange and red crits, mostly red crits at 3 stacks. So the next slot here, I'm going to be using Serration, but there's a few options for this slot, and I'll go over it at the end. This slot here is going to be Hunter Munitions. Now, Hunter Munitions on critical is going to apply a slash proc, and depending on like how Hunter Munitions works is the stronger the weapon, the stronger the slash proc. You know, if you were to take a little tiny assault rifle that, you know, maybe is high DPS but it has low damage, you're going to get these like little piddly slash procs. Well, this weapon actually does pretty high damage. It's not like a, you know, sniper rifle or like bazooka levels of damage, but it has a respectable amount of damage that it produces. And so you're going to get these, you know, respectable size slash procs. And so Hunter Munitions is definitely worth using on this weapon, especially since it's an AoE weapon. So not only are you going to get that slash proc on your main target, but you're going to get it on the targets around it. Okay, and then we're going to be using Critical Delay and Vital Sense for our crit chance, crit damage mods. And then we're going to make viral here with Malignant Force and Primed Cryo Rounds. If you don't have the Primed Cryo Rounds, you can go with the 60-60 instead. The 60-60 cold. I wouldn't go with the 90 cold. It's not really worth it. It's like, it's too in between. It doesn't give you enough flat damage, and it doesn't give you any status chance. So you either go with a 60-60 cold, or you go with the, you know, if you have it, you go with the Primed Cryo Rounds. And just remember, in Whispers content, enemies are resistant and immune to viral, so you're going to be wanting to use corrosive in Whispers instead of viral. And then in the Exilus slot here, we're going to use Terminal Velocity Now, something else about this weapon is that when in Incarnon mode specifically, so in Incarnon mode, you go to shoot it, it's going to shoot this like explosive disc out, and it's going to start pinging around. It has a little tiny bit of a homing effect. It's not a very strong homing effect. And in fact, most of the time that homing effect kind of screws you up because you're trying to aim for the head and it'll like pull down into the chest. But it has a little bit of a homing effect and it starts bouncing around. Now, terminal velocity is only going to affect the projectile speed of your main shot, like your initial shot. Once it starts pinging around, there's nothing that affects that velocity. So, but the initial shot is going to help you get headshots with this weapon to activate galvanized scope. So that's where we're going to go with terminal velocity. There's not really anything else too good in this slot, so that's really the way to go. And then in the arcane slot, we're going to be going with primary merciless. You can go with deadhead also, but let me see here. So primary merciless is going to give you 360% flat damage, and it's going to give you 30% reload speed. Now, reload speed on Incarnon weapons make the Incarnon switch faster. So like when you go into Incarnon mode, it's actually going to switch to Incarnon mode faster. So this is basically 360% flat damage and a 30% quicker Incarnon switch. Now the other option is going to be primary deadhead, which is also going to be 360% flat damage, but this weapon doesn't have recoil, so you're not really going to get anything from that negative weapon recoil, but you are going to get the plus 30% headshot multiplier. Even though you are going to be going for headshots with this weapon because you're trying to keep your galvanized scope up, it's not the easiest thing. Like probably only about 50% of your shots. I mean, I guess it depends on how well you can do it because a lot, like I said, the homing effect a lot of times will pull your shot down into the chest. But you know, a lot of the times, like 50%-ish of the time that I use the weapon, I'm not getting headshots. And so for me, it's actually just easier to keep up primary merciless than it is deadhead, but you could go with either one. Just remember that deadhead, you're not going to really get much out of that weapon recoil effect. Okay, that's pretty much the build there. I'm going to go over the evolutions real quick, and then we'll get into the gameplay. So first evolution is not really going to be anything. It's just that you've unlocked the evolutions. Second one, we're going to be going for Swift Blades, which is a plus 77 base damage increase. And then it has a little bit of an added effect where when you have a channeled ability active, you get plus 70% fire rate. That's okay. This is a pretty heavy weapon. You're not really going to be shooting it fast. Like even though I can shoot this weapon fast because of that 70% fire rate, I'm actually going to be holding my shots a lot of times because I don't want to just waste the Incarnon ammo. So just view the channeled, having a channeled active ability, you get 70% fire rate. View that as like a little added bonus, but not really a necessity for this build. Now, there are certain things that you would think are channeled abilities, and the game doesn't count them as channeled. There are certain things that you think are channeled abilities, and the game kind of halfway counts them as channeled. And so you might want to look this up and see which channeled abilities work with this. So for me, I'm going to be using Gloom on my Naros, and Gloom is one of those halfway where it works sometimes and it doesn't work other times. And it's because Gloom is a channeled ability, but I'm only going to get that plus 70% fire rate when enemies are affected by my Gloom. So if there's no enemies within my Gloom radius, I'm not going to get that 70% fire rate. Once enemies go into the Gloom radius, I get the 70% fire rate. So Gloom is like kind of one of those works half the time, doesn't work half the time. Again, just view this as a little bit of an added benefit. You don't really need the crazy fire rate anyway. The other one here, Plentiful Mayhem, not really worth it. So this is this is plus base damage. Plus base damage is pretty friggin' strong. So this is only plus 57, and the one back here that we're going with is plus 77. So that's 20 base damage on the weapon that we're going to lose by going to this plus 57 one. And, we have the shenanigans where it starts taking our ammo directly when we do multi-shots and stuff. I don't really like this one. I'm going to stick with Swift Saw Blades. Okay, second evolution, I'm going to be going for projectile speed. It's just going to help get headshots a little bit easier. Basically, the faster the projectile goes, the less that homing effect is actually going to work. So you're kind of like, trying to screw over that homing effect so you can get easier headshots. This one here, not really that good. And this one here, not really that good. It doesn't affect the Incarnon modes. So, and then finally, last evolution, we are just going to go for Commodore's Fortune, which is just a big dumb crit chance increase. This one right here, not really that good, because we're not really going to be using the charged effect. And Critical Parallel, not really that good. We want high crit chance. That way we can start like in orange crits already, like yellow with orange crits. So we're going to go with Commodore's Fortune in the middle there. Okay. Now that I've over-explained that, again, I'm going to be testing this weapon by itself. I'm not going to be mixing it with anything. And because of that, I'm going to be using a Naros with no Archon shards. I'm going to, my Naros has no mods that affect weapon damage, no arcanes that affect weapon damage. I put Power Donation on just so I can weaken the effect of Gloom, but all Gloom is going to do is give me lifesteal, which doesn't matter, and it's going to slow enemies a bit. So that's really all it's going to do. But I put Power Donation on just to make it a little bit weaker, the Gloom effect. And I have a pet with no Sentinel weapon and no mods that affect weapon damage. That way we can just test the miter itself. Okay. Let me stop running my mouth, and we'll go into... sorry, Dark. Afterwards, I'll try to help you. Okay, so I'll go into a Kuva Survival. I'm going to do this for 10 minutes, kill some trash, kill some acolytes with it in Steel Path, and then we'll do a Lua Conjunction after.
Scans show Grineer are harvesting Kuva nearby.
So again, because I'm going to be using Gloom, I'm going to put not an ammo pad, a energy pad down. That way I have enough energy to use my Gloom. Naros doesn't have a huge energy pool, but I'm also going to cast my 4 to double my armor, but none of this affects weapon damage, so... Okay. Open this up. Press my little Gloom button. Okay. So again, you don't really have to charge it. You can just go bam, bam, and then I'm going to switch to Incarnon and just, start my little adventure here. So again, once you get 1 stack of Galvanized Scope, you're at orange and red. You won't even see a yellow. Unless you're like lazy and you don't get like a headshot in about 12 seconds, then you might see yellows until you get a single headshot. So you start seeing a little bit of yellows there. It means I was kind of lazy. But bam, I got a headshot and back into orange and red, so it's not terrible. Like I said, you're not going to sit at 5 stacks of Galvanized Scope just because it's not incredibly easy to get headshots, because this weapon wants to pull down with its homing effect. But you don't need a lot of headshots. You just need a single one, and it'll get rid of those yellow crits. It'll just keep you in orange and reds. Oh, I said I was going to go over options for that Serration slot, didn't I? And I didn't do that. So I'll explain it here then, I guess. Bladed Rounds is the option for the Serration slot. Bladed Rounds is likely better than Serration. I'm going to stick with Serration myself just because it's a dumb mod that works all the time. But, I mean, technically Bladed Rounds also works all the time. I feel like it's at the same level as Serration on yellow crits, and then, once your weapon can comfortably get into oranges and reds, Bladed Rounds is definitely better than Serration. And this weapon does sit comfortably at orange and reds. So you could use Bladed Rounds over Serration. I'm not. I'm going to stay with Serration myself. But it is an option, and it is likely the better option. But keep in mind, that's also your Riven slot. So if you don't want to think too much about it, you can plop whatever 2 you want on there. And when you get a Riven, you just get rid of both of them anyway. Bane mod, yeah. So a Bane mod would objectively be better than both Serration and Bladed Rounds, just because Bane mods, the way they, the math works on Bane mods is a lot stronger than like additive damage, basically. So yeah, Bane mod would be way better than Bladed Rounds or Serration. It's just that me personally, I don't build. Oh shit, I should be in Incarnon. I'm like shooting the shitty mode. Me personally, I don't use Bane mod just because I don't like to switch my build up. Every mission. But people that don't mind, or they have like 3 different builds for every faction, a Bane mod would be better in that slot. That is 100% true. So yeah, Serration, Bladed Rounds, or the Bane. Bane being the strongest, if you're willing to play Banes. Bladed Rounds likely being the second strongest. And then Serration being like the meh out of the bunch. Works all the time. You get a little bit of extra damage, but it's probably a bit weaker than Bladed Rounds. Yeah, you never switch either? Yeah. I know, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I respect Bane mods. I'd love to use it. I'm just too lazy to switch my builds every mission. That's why I go with like the general elements. I just go with viral usually, or whispers. I'll go with corrosive, which is just the general element that's good against whispers. All right, so we got this little guy coming out here. Where's he at? He like right in front of my face and he disappeared. There he is. So there's like 3 shots and he was dead. You can self-stagger yourself with this one, so just be careful. I typically don't run Prime Sure-Footed, but if you are a Prime Sure-Footed connoisseur, this weapon could be a good candidate for it. I'm going to hit a life support. No, actually don't need to. I'm at 90%. I must have picked up a few little ones. And this is pretty good at killing everything. It's pretty good at killing eggs, misses, acolytes, and trash mobs. So it would normally... Hey, Marcellus. How you doing? I know I'm up like a lot earlier than I normally am. I'm kind of want to get a video out this morning. Get it uploaded to YouTube before my normal time. Maybe I'll do 2 videos today. I'm not really too sure. Sometimes when I do 2 videos, like one video gets underwatched, even though it'll be like a good weapon. Like the my Nell video. I think the Nell is one of the best secondaries in the game, but I did it like on a day that I did 2 videos. And so it's like I have some videos sitting at a few hundred views that are like really crappy weapons, and I have like the Nell sitting at 20 views, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's got like so low views, and it's like one of the best secondaries in the game. But I think it's just because I did I did 2, so people like you maybe look at the one that shows up first, and then forget about the second one. All right, I gotta concentrate because I am missing everything. Let's switch this on here. Yeah, so if you've like looked at the galvanized scope stacks in the top right corner, like you'll see that I'm probably on average sitting at about 2 or 3 stacks. Like it's going to be unlikely with this weapon you'll sit at 5 stacks of galvanized scope, just because it's not like sometimes when it looks like you're getting a headshot, it actually you're not. It's going to count as like an AOE kill, and so even when you do get headshots, sometimes the game doesn't count them. But it's okay because all you need is 1 stack of galvanized scope to start getting into red crits. And then past 1 stack is when you start getting into, more and more red crits. All right, we got Malice coming. He's the most dangerous out of them. So he's going to put a bubble on me. There it is. I'm going to roll out of it, and now I can fight him. All right, he's dead. And in fact, I think this weapon has a very high disposition. So if you got a Riven with crit chance, and like let's say you could get like 200% crit chance on that Riven, because I think you probably could because this has high disposition, you could probably plop that Riven right over galvanized scope, and you would always be at orange and red crits. You wouldn't have to worry about getting headshots to be at orange and red. So hey, that's an option right there too. Of course, I don't do my builds with Rivens because not everyone's going to have one, but if you can get one with crit chance, and if you can get one with like 200-ish% crit chance, plop that right over galvanized scope, and yeah, you don't actually have to hunt for headshots anymore. You'll just always be at orange and red crits. I don't know. I don't think it would put you in full reds, but it would put you in like mostly reds with some oranges. Okay, so we're at 10 minutes here. We have 884 kills, which is really good. It's under here. So when I do these tests, average weapons usually hit at about 400 kills. So this being at 884, and I was kind of, running my mouth, not paying attention. I was shooting in non-Incarnon not half the time, but a lot of the time, just because I wasn't paying attention. For it to be double the kills of an average weapon is super strong. Okay, we're going to take this back to extraction, and then we're going to go into a Lua conjunction real quick for like 10 minutes. And I don't really foresee this having any issues in Lua conjunction. It's a strong weapon.
They fought well. Good deaths all.
Oh, that was nice of you, Biceps, going to help Dark. I'll check too when I'm done with this video, seeing if he still needs help. Okay, so we're going to go to Lua. Circulus. Now enemies here are going to be... there we go. Okay, I was confused. I was like, 90 to 110. No, they should be 180 to 200. And they're going to be mixed enemies too. They're not just going to all be Grineer. They're going to be, all types. Corrupted.
These foes deserve your respect. Honor them with quick deaths, and
All right, I'm going to cast my 4 to double my armor, and then I'm going to put an energy pad so I can get my gloom up and running. Press my gloom, and that'll be the last time I use an ability. I know I said not to charge a weapon and just do quick shots to fill it up, but I have a habit. I'm like, ooh, I want big numbers. I'm going to charge this thing up. But you don't really need to. The headshots you get from the charge and the headshots you get from quick attacks are going to fill it up the exact same amount. Alright, I need to get into the thick of some enemies here because this is not a good start. The big thing on Lua Conjunction is that you're starved on life supports a lot of times. And when the Thraxes come out, they suck life supports. So this weapon should not struggle on Lua Conjunction unless I have like weird map bugs.
If you have a necromech. You may
where
use it.
enemies don't want to spawn, like here. I've had to use a life support already. I would like to get some enemies, please. Eventually, one day. I don't think I moved that far from spawn. I think it was only about 100 meters, under 50 meters. Game does not want to spawn enemies. I've had this issue one other time with a weapon, and it was a strong weapon, and it ended up failing this little test I do just because the enemies were not spawning. Because like right here, this is not normal spawns, only getting like, 3 or 4 dudes at a time. This is kind of like weird bug spawns. If you allow all the enemies to spawn and then you run 500 meters away, I could understand it. But I was only about 100, 150 meters from where I started, and all the enemies weren't spawned yet. Here we go. Now we're starting to get a good amount on, 2.5 minutes, almost 3 minutes in. I'm going to have to hit another life support just because we were waiting for enemies for so long, for 3 minutes. The game forgot to add enemies. So we have the first Acolyte coming. I'm going to make sure we're full Incarnon. Make sure we have a few scope stacks up too. He's dead. So if you do like careful shots, it'll be like maybe 4 shots to kill the Acolyte. Or you could just do what I do, which is just spam dumbly into him, and that'll be like maybe 5 or 6 shots.
They know you're here. Prepare for sentient fighters.
Alright, I'm going to make my way over to the next set of life supports. I'm going to try to do it kind of slowly, that way I can bring these enemies over and like fight them at the same time.
The longer you hold out, the deeper I can search. But if you need to leave,
Thraxes here.
extraction is ready. Hiding Lua in the void risked the unfathomable. I fear we are seeing the consequences of that risk now. Destroy these.
If you've noticed, my gloom has actually like been down, and I haven't really noticed it too much. And it's just because you don't really need the fire rate from the you don't really need the fire rate from the one evolution. You just are picking that evolution for the large base damage increase. So if you don't even want to pair it with like a channeled ability like it requires, that's fine. Like, it's not a big deal, because this weapon doesn't really need fire rate. It's just like kind of an added bonus. Like, hey, you're using a channeled ability, you can get plus 70% fire rate on a weapon you don't really need it on. Might as well do this while I'm waiting for enemies to spawn. This is going to be a cursed run, I think, here with the enemies. It's not really the weapon's fault. It's just the map not spawning enemies. Stealth drift. And just remember, there's not, even though I'm using, increased projectile speed to get my main shot out there quicker, nothing affects the speed of the follow-up, like, pings that come from a shot. So, like, after you shoot, like, it'll start pinging around. You see how it's, like, way slower? Like, nothing affects that projectile speed. So projectile speed just affects the initial shot. Here, I'm going to put my gloom on. I'm just going to show you like how fast this could shoot. You know, like you don't really need to shoot that fast with this weapon. You're going to be wasting a lot of ammo if you shoot that fast. And that's why the fire rate's not like super needed. I mean, I guess sometimes like if you really, really want to spam into an Acolyte, I guess you could do that, but you don't really need it. Here we go. We got this Acolyte. Where is he? I'm going to spam it into him. There we go. I probably wasted like twice as much ammo as I needed to just because I was spamming and probably like missing or not aiming well. So you don't really need the fire rate on this weapon. I'm going to hit this life support up here because we are struggling, not because of the weapon, because of the spawns, unfortunately. So it's so tempting to charge the weapon when you don't need to do it. But I do it all the time, even though I said not to. I go against my own advice. It's just one of those things. The weapon's able to be charged, so you just naturally want to charge it.
Those optimists are scanning for targets.
Don't worry.
All right, so we got Thraxes here. We're going to kill these Thraxes, and then we'll head to extraction.
Just the spot in the cannon for her.
These manifestations must not be allowed
All right,
a
both are
foothold
dead.
on
So we're at 10 minutes. We're at 455 kills. That's kind of to be expected a little bit with Lua Conjunction, just because you spend more time fighting larger enemies in Lua Conjunction. But I also had the crazy, spawn issues. So a large part of that was the first 3 minutes not having any enemies to shoot at, really. So we'll go to extraction. I'll go over the build one more time.
As you conquer the foe, so you conquer yourself.
her. 'Cause 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 'cause
Okay, so it's the miter and the Incarnon mode for it. It's a primary like saw launcher. Pretty unique weapon. Has 3 firing modes with the Incarnon, of course. So you have the regular fire mode, which is just click left click. There's the charge fire mode, which is hold left click, and then there's the Incarnon form, which is you switch to Incarnon with your middle click, and then it'll be Incarnon modes. Now the charged mode has punch through, and the regular mode. Actually, in fact, it says the regular mode has punch through too. Oh my goodness. Well, I guess they both have punch through. From what I was reading, and only the charge mode had punch through, but I guess maybe they changed it. Maybe it was outdated information. But anyway, it has an 8 punch through. The Incarnon mode is going to have innate heat as well. The radial attack only has heat and then whatever element you put on it, and then the direct attack of the Incarnon mode will have IPS stats. Has very high disposition for how strong the weapon is too, so that's has really good potential to have strong ribbons. So galvanized chamber we're going to be using for multi-shot. Galvanized scope we're going to be using for crit chance. Now, like I was saying before, because of the high disposition, so with galvanized scope, this build starts in yellow and orange crits. As soon as you get your first stack of galvanized scope, you're going to be in orange and red crits. And then from there, you're going to just see more and more red crits. And then if you're at 5 stacks of galvanized scope, it'll all be red. But that's hard to achieve with this weapon. You're usually going to be floating around 2 or 3 stacks of galvanized scope, which is fine. You're still in orange and red crits. But because of the riven disposition of this weapon, if you were to get a riven with crit chance, and specifically 200+% crit chance, because you have the 120 here, and then to get out of yellows you need to get 1 stack, so that's 40. So 160-ish will get you out of yellow crits and into orange and reds. So if you can get a riven with 200-ish% crit chance, you should be able to just plop it over galvanized scope, take galvanized scope off completely, put it right here, and then you won't actually have to hunt for headshots. It'll just naturally be doing those red crits. So hey, that's an option. I don't do my build with rivens, but I give you the information in case you want it. Next mod here is going to be serration. There's a few options for this. I will try to remember to go over those options. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it right now because I will forget. So instead of serration, there is bladed rounds. Now, bladed rounds is likely better than serration. Serration and bladed rounds are about the same strength when you're in yellow crits. But once you get to orange and reds, bladed rounds is likely better than serration. And this weapon does sit in orange and reds, as you've seen. It sits in orange and red crits pretty comfortably. It infrequently goes back down to yellow, and then you get 1 headshot and it goes right back up to orange and reds. So I'm going to stick with serration just because I love the big dumb serration mod that I don't really have to think about too much. But bladed rounds is likely equal or better than serration. All that being said, this slot right here is also probably going to be your riven slot unless you get the crit chance that we just talked about for here. So if you don't get crit chance, you're just going to plop it over this slot right here. Hunter munitions is going to apply slashes on criticals, and the way hunter munitions work is bigger boom, bigger slash. And so on little piddly weapons, you get little piddly slashes, and on big giant weapons, you get big giant slashes. The miter is kind of in between. It's not like a bazooka or a Brahma or anything like that, but it still has respectable damage. So you're going to get these pretty respectable slash procs from it. So it's worth using on the miter. It's going to help killing Exmuses and Thraxes and stuff like that. Especially because it's an AoE weapon. So anything around the target is also going to be getting slash proc. Critical delay and vital sense is going to be our crit chance, crit damage mods. Then we're going to go with malignant force and primed cryo rounds to make viral. Now, if you don't have primed cryo rounds, the other 60/60 is probably just as good as primed cryo rounds. So instead of the this one, you're going to go with the 60/60 cold mod. Don't go with the 90 cold mod. It's kind of like too much in between. You know, it's not good enough as far as flat damage, and it doesn't have any status chance. So it's like, it's just not. It's just too much of an in between where like it's too mediocre. So you either go with a 60/60, or if you have the primed, you go with the primed. Terminal velocity is going to be increasing our projectile speed. This will only increase our main projectile. As soon as the projectile hits an enemy, it's going to like try to ping around and like home on other enemies. It's not going to affect the projectile speed of that part of it, but nothing affects that projectile speed, so that's fine. And then for arcanes, we're going to go with primary merciless. You can also go with primary deadhead. They're both going to be 360% flat damage increases, but merciless is going to give you 30% reload speed, which equates for Incarnon weapons, it equates into quicker mode switch into Incarnon. And then for primary deadhead, you're going to get a plus 30% headshot multiplier. There's not any recoil on this weapon, so the negative recoil doesn't really do anything. So this one's going to give you a headshot multiplier of 30%, which this weapon, again, you're hunting for heads with this build, but you're not getting frequent headshots, or headshot kills, I should say. So it's up to you. I go with primary merciless. I really like Deadhead. I use it on most of my builds, but I think on this weapon, primary merciless might win out, for me at least, but either one is fine. Okay, and then we're going to go over the Incarnons. First one is nothing, it's just, you know, you've got the Incarnon. Second one here is we're going to be going with the Swift Saw Blades. Now this one's going to give us a plus 77 base damage increase. And then we're going to have a little bit of an added effect with when we have a channeled ability active, we get plus 70% fire rate. Now, it's weird. The game weirdly counts things as channeled sometimes not. Some things that look channeled aren't channeled. And so you're going to have to look this one up yourself or do testing yourself when you're like trying to use specific abilities. Because I can't just, you know, I can't go over every single channeled ability right here. But Gloom, for instance, I'm using Gloom on Inaros. Gloom is one of those 50-50 ones where it works half time, doesn't work half time. So enemies have to be affected by Gloom for it to count as on, even though it's on. And when enemies are not affected by Gloom, like if everyone is out of that radius, it doesn't count as you having a channeled ability active, even though your Gloom is on. So you won't get that effect. But all that being said, you don't really need the fire rate on this weapon. It's a big, heavy weapon. You don't really care about spamming it anyway because you're just going to be wasting shots. So just view the plus 70% fire rate as a bonus if you want it. If you happen to be using a frame that has a channeled ability, it's kind of a bonus that you don't even need. So don't worry too much about that. Other option here is Plentiful Mayhem. It's not really an option. It's pretty doo-doo. This is just going to increase plus 57% of base damage, whereas this one is 77, so you get 20 less. And it has those weird like shenanigans where it like pulls ammo for multi-shot, and it's not worth it. This one's better. Swift Saw Blades. All right, third evolution. I'm going to be going for more projectile speed because we are fighting against the homing effect of this weapon. We want the projectile to go quickly into the enemy's heads and the homing effect to have less of an effect of pull. And so projectile speed helps that. This one is not really an option. And this one's not really an option. So yeah, it's easy pick there. And the fourth evolution here is another easy pick. We're just going to be going for increased critical chance by plus 22%. Just because it's going to allow us to start at a higher crit tier. This one is not an option because we want to be using the Incarnon mode, not the charge shot mode. And this one right here is not really an option because we just want more crit chance. We don't really care about a little bit of both crit and status. We just want all crit. It has enough status already to be producing like pretty good amounts of viral procs. We don't really need 12% status. So yeah, that's the Miter there and the Incarnon. It's a really good weapon. Probably one of the best weapons in the game right now. I would definitely suggest on building it out. The base Miter without the Incarnon form is like pretty mediocre. It can be made to be like okay, but it's still pretty mediocre. But once you get the Incarnon adapter and plop it on the Miter, it's really good. One of the best weapons in the game.
Well put together.
All right, I appreciate you guys watching. If you liked it, give it a like, and thank you so much. Bye.